Okay, welcome back to another episode of Words That Kill. And today we're discussing gore in fiction. And today's guest, I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hey guys, my name is Nina, the Arcangela. I'm a writer, editor, and publisher, a co-owner of Sirens Call Publications. I write with a horror writers group called Pen of the Damned. Also run a flash fiction prompt group with Lydia Prime, which is Ladies of Horror. They're given a picture. I think, Anita, you do this, right?
Yeah.
I give you send out a random picture. There's a set of 4 each month, and the picture is assigned randomly to the authors. And they just basically have to create a flash fiction, horror, and or dark fiction piece to go with it.
And it's a lot of fun.
It is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so today we're talking about the topic, bring on the gore. So
Yeah.
I'm going to start with the question I ask all my guests is, how do you craft your killers? And especially when you're dealing with heightened violence levels, do you go with more of a psycho vibe or more of a normal vibe hiding the killer?
I prefer more of a normal vibe, not because I'm looking to shock anyone, but when I read, I prefer, if you can surprise me, then it's an excellent read for me. So if I'm going to surprise my reader, then, I'm not honestly not going for the outright, here they are presentation. I'm going to go with a little bit of subterfuge, gaslighting, if you will, to sort of bury that and keep that down a little bit until it's time to reveal. Everything in writing, as far as I'm concerned, needs to be purposeful. The words you use, the way you do it, how you introduce your characters, and how you let your characters kill and or be killed.
Okay, so how do you go about crafting the death scene?
It really all depends on the type of horror I'm writing. I don't sit down and plan anything out, but if I'm going to do something that's a bit more emotive, a bit more story-oriented and less blatant, I guess the way I craft them is delicately, for lack of a better term. And I always make sure that the killer is more than just the killer. They have to be a little bit purposeful. They have to have some value in their own character, rather than just being flat out a psychopath and just zero empathy and just slash and burn. Then there's other pieces where that's again more purposeful, to have someone who is completely, your killer be completely off their rocker and out of their mind, and just no compunction whatsoever, and just let them go straight to the wall with it and do what's necessary. I'm not a believer of adding gore for gore's sake. So there, again, it has to be purposeful. If there's no point in putting it in, don't put it in. It's just extra words.
Okay. So do settings play a part when you're using a lot of gory violence? Like, for instance, does it fit better into a rural setting or an urban setting or something like that?
Again, it depends on what you're writing. In an urban setting, the violence can be a little bit more aggressive, because in a urban setting, there is more violence, there is more aggression, there are more people packed closely together, more crime, more things happen. It's more kind of the expected norm. Whereas if you're out in a more rural setting, your violence tends to come as a bit of a shock to the people, characters. Sorry, I think of my characters as people. They're not really characters in my brain. They are people. So, it needs to come at them a little bit slower. It kind of needs to come from the side instead of front on, because they're not looking for it front on. Whereas your urbanites, if you will, people in either inner city or close to city environments, they're sort of looking over their shoulder 24/7. They're waiting for it to come their way. So it's fair to allow your character to anticipate, and to let the anticipation build into the killer and whatnot. And that again reflects on, what type of gore you use, whether they're being dragged down an alley and having a throat slit, or, in a rural setting, maybe it's going to be something subtle and they're going to hear a sound. And after, a bit of metaphor and back and forth, they're going to get something a little bit more rural, like maybe an ice pick or an axe or something less, urban oriented.
Or run over by a tractor.
I hope that made sense. Yes, exactly. If the combine is coming for them. Exactly.
Yeah. If the combine's coming for you, you run. Trust me, you run.
The combine is on its way is not going to happen on Fifth Avenue. It's going to happen in a field or on a farm. So, yeah, you have to place it appropriate to the setting. So, yeah.
When you are writing violence in horror, and with a purpose, as you said, I mean, is there a point of no return? Like, or do you push the limits all the way for whatever the story needs it to be?
A lot of what I write has a strong emotive value, and the violence has to carry through. I mean, in that case, you're looking less for gore and more for, oh my God, that just happened. Whereas, maybe I'm writing a splatterpunk piece. And in which case, if I don't put the gore in, nobody who reads splatterpunk is going to read it. So I'm going to go full bore on the gore in that. So again, you're purposeful to, depending on what you're writing, if you've been building a story and it seems like it's coming and it seems like it's coming and it seems like it's coming, and then it doesn't come, it's a bit of a letdown. But at the same time, you've also kind of achieved moving them forward through the story without actually having to describe it all and let them sort of imagine it.
Is there anything that is taboo for you that you won't do, like as far as violence goes?
Yes, there are 3 things that are completely taboo. One of them is rape. That's completely not in my realm of willing to go to. Underaged sexual violence and bestiality. Those are the 3 things that I avoid. I just don't include them. I don't feel that to write I need to do that. I don't judge people who do. That's fine. That's their writing. That's what they've crafted. That's what they feel when they do write. That's fine. Those are just things that, for me, I don't need to put them in to get where I'm going.
Okay, you touched on this before, but gore is a shock effect. Do you think it's a good thing, or can it enhance a story?
Yes, absolutely. Most of my pieces start, midstream. I don't generally do the, dark and stormy night thing, the intro. So I usually start, in medias res, and just if you can't catch on by a couple paragraphs in what's happening, then I haven't done a good job of constructing those few paragraphs, which means you shouldn't be reading it and I shouldn't be putting it out there. But yeah, I think that gore, for the sake of shock and or what would be the right term? Flip factor. And that's, sometimes a story needs to be flipped on its head to have effect. And I'm always going for effect. I want you to feel what you're reading. I don't want you to just read it and go, wow, that was interesting. I want you to feel it when I write it. So sometimes a piece is seemingly harmless, and in that case, shock value with the gore comes into play. Other times, you don't necessarily need to be graphic with your gore to get it across. You can be descriptive. You can, with the other characters' interactions, let them sort of convey what's happening without having to necessarily put down the words and put the actual gore flat out there for you to see, because at that point, the story kind of becomes a little bit one-dimensional, as opposed to letting it build and letting it roll from there.
So you would class letting the reader's imagination fill in the blanks as gore?
Yeah, absolutely. But again, if the piece is purposeful for gore, and I do have some stuff I've written that was expressly for the sake of getting the gore out there, then going in, it right off the bat. So you're never going to be shocked by it. But yeah, I think that letting it kind of happen that way, and not necessarily having to, when you sit down to dinner, you don't have to say, eat your peas and your carrots. Obviously, if you're eating your peas, you're eating your carrots too. You're eating your veg. So I think it kind of works that way. For me, anyway.
Okay, so coming from the point of your readers, have you ever had a negative reaction, or are most of them been positive for you?
Most of them have been positive. The negative comes usually from people who are more accustomed to reading an emotive prose style piece from me. And then all of a sudden, every now and then, I'll throw out something that just slams hard. I mentioned splatterpunk, just slams hard on that gore or violence angle. And there's always a little bit of pushback on that from the regulars, but not from new people who haven't read something I've put out before. They're not surprised to see me employing those sort of devices in my story, as opposed to, sticking with metaphor and you figuring out that, a drifting cloud of hair is a dead bloated body in the water. I don't need to use the words. I can use words around the words that will imply what I'm trying to convey.
Okay, so what is the bloodiest death you've ever done for a character?
Oh, the bloodiest death I've ever done for a character. Okay, so I wrote a very short story, and it was because somebody told me that women don't do gore and violence well. So, being a
I've
writer.
been reading the wrong women.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's like, dude, we're so far beyond that. You guys are simple. Guys tend to like get their violence out and be done with it. We tend to, we mold it. It's malleable. We deal with it. We create it. I guess like life and everything else, we just sort of like we want to birth it. I guess is the right way that I want to say it, from a female perspective. That to just like boom, slam it out there. But yeah, I was given or offered an opportunity and challenge to, well, if you think you can shock me, shock me. So I would say the goriest death I've written came partially from shock value, partially from the words employed to deliver the story. But I wrote a piece about an experiment, and they were experimenting on both men and women. They were looking to produce a stronger fight response from a woman to protect what was her child. Again, back to birth. And the male character in the story is mutated to extreme violence and to send out what he has, his progeny, sent it out and destroy it. So in this story, it takes place in a laboratory environment, and there is a woman who is not the mother of two children, and the gentleman who is the father, if you'll say that, because he's no longer really human, of the two children. And in another room is a mother of the two children. The stranger, the woman who's been snatched off the street, is put into the room with the two small children. The gentleman is let loose. He's no longer human. He's humanoid at this point. He's basically turning into a monster. What he does is he goes and he finds the two children. He sniffs them out, and he brutally destroys them by, like ripping off their heads, biting into them. There's a lot of description in the story about how the spatter of it and the ichor and the gore and the visceral aspects, what they do psychologically to the poor woman who doesn't know these children but has an instinct to protect them simply because she's thrown in the room with them, and she has no idea whether or not they've been just like snatched off the street like she has or not, or whether there's another purpose to them. All she knows is she should try and protect them. But yet this creature man comes, and his job, he's been genetically altered to find his progeny and destroy it, and he tends to he destroys it in a very salacious sort of way, almost if you think of having a feast and or everything you'd like to ever eat laid out in front of you, and just deliciously going along and tasting every little bit and having every little thing you've ever told you couldn't have, but you only have to have one bite. You don't have to have it all. Like, you don't have to finish it. You can just have a little bit of it. And he just kind of tears apart these two children in front of the woman to the point where she just mentally breaks down and just isn't capable of dealing. While at the same time, the mother is on another side of a wall trying desperately to get to her children to protect them, because the entire point of the experiment is actually not necessarily about the gentleman killing his progeny. It's about engineering a creature in female form who will do anything, no matter what it takes, without compunction, without thought, without remorse to protect what is her own. I think that's an answer.
Fascinating answer.
Story.
So, how creative have you ever gotten with the character death and a bloody character death?
To the point where probably 2,500 words was nothing but the death.
Ooh, that sounds interesting.
and those are exercises. They're not intended to be, stories to be read for entertainment. They're exercises in working through character development and character responses and what happens. Just like you can do a piece about just dialogue and how to effectively use dialogue, and your entire piece can be dialogue if you've done it effectively and purposefully. Now, normally, keep your dialogue to a minimum because that doesn't allow the reader any imagination. The reader's kind of dead set locked into what the character's saying, so they really can't develop the character's personality in their own head, and they can't apply, like a lot of us do. We apply people we know or ourselves to the character, or whatever we're imagining what we want to be in the book or in the manuscript or in the story or whatever it's going to be. I think from a reader perspective, sometimes it's more purposeful to give them flat out on the dish what they'd like, and other times to make them work for it.
Okay, so I know you write a lot of monsters in your stories because I've read a lot of them. When you're writing a monster versus a human, how do you do you always make one worse than the other, or do you just kind of mix and match, or how do you go about that?
What I tend to do is actually make the monster something that you want to empathize with, and I make the human a little bit less empathetic. The human tends to be, I'm not going to say deserving of what's coming, but 9 out of 10 times they were not, a upstanding, upright citizen, and this creature just found them. Other times it does happen that way, but those are much shorter pieces, and they're just quick impact pieces. But the monsters, I tend to humanize the monster more than the human, only because I really, really, really want you to feel the monster. And then when he flips and he, she, whichever the monster may be, they, whatever, I don't generally assign gender to them. I allow the reader to assign the gender to them. So, at that point, when that moment comes, there's that, oh gosh, that shock moment of, wow, did that really just happen? That's the point of, I guess, humanizing the monster and dehumanizing the human.
Okay. So when you're using weapons to kill characters as opposed to monsters, do you have a favorite? A go-to?
Oh gosh, a go-to weapon. Usually it's hands, claws. I very seldom write in actual weapons because most of what I write is shorter fiction. So in shorter fiction, I'm always looking for that personal connection to what you're reading. So usually it's a hand, a claw, a tail, something along that lines, barbs that grow off of a body, things that come from a body that mid scene will sluice out of a body and be the aggressor at that point. So as opposed to a weapon, but if I had to choose a weapon, I think it would probably be a mace. I find a mace an exceptionally effective weapon.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What's the oddest thing you've ever researched for a story?
The oddest thing I've ever researched for a story?
Yeah, in relation to a character death.
In terms of what?
The character death.
In terms of a character death, the oddest thing I've ever probably researched was a garrote, because I actually got a phone call from a government agency questioning why I was looking into these things. Because when I do my research, I mean, you go whole hog, you go all in, or you don't go, because halfway isn't enough information. And it had gotten to the point where, I'm actually shopping and adding things to a shopping cart to actually figure out, okay, how long would it really take me to get this? Again, hands-on killing. So how long will it take me to get this? What's the expected cost level? So does my character actually, will they be using something professional, or are they really just ripping out a piano string and going for it and tearing up their own hands too? So yeah, I would say researching that was probably the most interesting and a little bit scary, because I think I'm on a government list or two for that one. Yeah, I actually did get a phone call, and they were questioning why. And I simply explained that, I'm a writer and have a publishing company, and directed them to it. And after that, it was, okay, thank you for your time. And I was like,
She's just one of those crazy writers.
yeah, hopefully that's what they think. Certainly what I tried to convey.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, but that is the running joke in the writing community. No one, you just hope the government never sees your research history.
Yeah, on that one, I just went a little too far and didn't stop in time. So, yeah.
Okay, so speaking of research, do you have any favorite sites that you do your research at?
I just start at, like everybody says, Google it and see where it goes from there. The only thing I do is, I do have a background in developing web environments. So the only thing I will do is I will roll down and I will check the copyright, and I'll trace back the parent company. If the parent company does not seem friendly to what I'm doing or friendly to the horror community, I will back down and I'll leave that one be and I'll go look somewhere else. I find that to be extremely important because, the big D tends to pop up a lot, and I won't use what the D stands for, but, the mouse waving on the other end really doesn't like some of the associations that they end up with, just because, they are such a large company and whatnot. So again, just on a cautionary level, I always follow back the parent company on sites when I'm doing research and whatnot. And if everything's all well and fine, and and they're not affiliated with a company that I actually know pursues individuals for utilizing the information they put out in a way that they didn't intend it to be used, then I'll just run with it. So see where it takes me, follow it down the rabbit hole, I guess, wherever that rabbit hole goes.
Yeah, but that is one of the advantages of doing most of my stuff in history. It's all public domain.
It's all public domain, exactly. So you don't have to worry about those things coming back and biting you on the butt.
Yeah. The inventor of the musket is not going to come and sue me. No.
Right.
Yeah, unless we conjure him up with a Ouija board or something, but
unless somebody decides all of a sudden they have a copyright or trademark or register to that because they've made a film in 2020 and now you can't use that anymore.
Yeah, well, I generally don't use names. It's like I just do the research, the background research, so I know how it works, and then I'll just call it a rifle or a gun or whatever it is.
Yeah, and if you describe the parts of what you're referring to accurately, then an informed reader will pick up on it. An uninformed reader, it doesn't matter whether or not you've used the name because it's irrelevant to them. But an informed reader will figure out what you're talking about if you do it correctly.
Yeah, I just need to know how it works so I don't screw it up.
Right. Well, even as a publisher, we get people who send stuff in all the time. And, we just had some stuff come in for our e-zine that's going to publish for the summer. And, the author had mixed up their details to the point of they included a deadly animal, and they named the animal twice with two different subspecies of the animal and gave its coloring and described its coloring completely wrong. So, for an uninformed reader, that would not be a problem, but you always have to look for the informed reader. You have to keep the informed reader in mind. And a little pushback to the author of, well, you kind of have to pick which subspecies you're going to go with. And then once you pick it, you can't get creative with the coloring because it is actually a real animal. If you're going to step to the side and you're going to do something thoroughly fictitious and you're going to create your own creature, have at it. Do whatever you want. Make it whatever you want it to be. But if you're going to use something based in fact, you kind of have to at least get it, if not accurate, close.
Indeed. And on that note, we will wrap it up. And I'll let you tell everyone when they can find you and your writing.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, so I have a writing blog. It's Sotet Anguille, and I will spell that because that's that's a tough one. SOTETANGYL. I have to say it quickly. .com. That's my personal writing blog. On there you can find humor, tragedy, all sorts of things, even a poem or two, dare I say. But please don't judge it when you get there. I also am a co-founder and administrator of Pen of the Damned, which you can find a lot of writing on there.
Including mine.
Yes, and your writing as well. Excellent stories, fun stuff. I think it's a fantastic group. I think all the writers on there.
Oh yes, all the group is very, very talented.
Yeah, and there's free fiction that goes up every week. So if you ever don't have anything to read, or Big A isn't playing nice, you just pop on and there you go. There's since I think it started in 2012 when we began the group, so there's tons of free fiction there to be read. As far as social media goes, Instagram is probably the easiest place to find me. I am Dark Nina, Darc for the spelling of my last name, Nina. On Facebook, again, I'm Nina D. Arcangela. Not that hard to find. There's not that many of us. There are a few, but not that many. There is more than one. I've looked. And on Twitter, I am Dark_Nina. So those are the places you can most likely find me, ferret me out, those sort of things. And if you do go to sirenscallpublications.com or sirenscallpub.com, they both go to the same place. You go to About Us, and everything you would need to find me or anyone else involved with the company is right there on our page.
Yes, and an excellent e-zine and an excellent company as well. So.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nina. I appreciate that.
Anyway, and that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back later with another episode, so join us then. And that's all for now. Bye.
Thank you.